Right.
I don't know who to get a fucking loan from.
It is 8:04 on a Monday, May 23rd, 2022, 59 right now in downtown Huntington. I want to welcome back to the program Dr. Bret Barker, who has the book Sold Out Souls, and want to talk to him about a couple of different issues. Dr. Barker, good morning. Welcome back.
You got 10 grand?
Hey, good morning, Tom. Thanks for having me back on.
Appreciate you coming on. By the way, the World Economic Forum meeting in Switzerland this week. And, the good news is they're going to turn over our health sovereignty to the World Health Organization. Peace be upon them. I mean, that's your new god.
Oh, with all due sarcasm, I just can't wait.
Yeah. What do you make of all this?
It's insanity. It's completely insane.
And
it's just straight. Yeah.
What are they doing exactly? I mean, there's very little media coverage, a lot of social media coverage, but exactly from your understanding, what are they doing? And I saw the list that you tweeted out there that included, a bunch of Republican and Democrat senators and members of Congress that are going to be in Switzerland this week. So how are they exactly giving away our sovereignty?
Well, basically, we're going to let them be in charge. I mean, our own CDC, FDA, et cetera, are apparently not sufficient enough by their own admission if they need an outside organization to dictate what we should do for our own health and well-being.
So,
and once you take over a person's body, it doesn't matter about their government, their politics, their religion, anything else, because then you have full control.
Right. Exactly. And Daniel Horowitz of Conservative Review and The Blaze, he's saying that states should be proactive in this and prevent any of this from taking effect in our state.
Absolutely. We need to really push our states' rights. Unfortunately, some states, as we know, are more likely to lean towards this.
Yeah. Oh, of course. Especially your state there in California. And I want to get...
Unfortunately.
They're almost like, some type of communist country already. And at a recent hearing, by the way, at California State Assembly, a man stepped in front of a microphone during a comment period to speak out against a bill there, AB 2098, that would make spreading COVID-19 disinformation a form of unprofessional conduct among physicians. And the man was wearing a shirt that read, "Good luck with your vaccines." The person who wrote this article with MedPage Today, MedPageToday.com, Christina Fiore, says, tries to make it almost like you were the person that was there speaking.
That is the way I read that article. I was not there. I did not speak at that assembly. I have not been to the state capitol in California, so it absolutely wasn't me. There's a big problem with that. That's libel per se, for one, and thank her for spreading it everywhere. We'll make sure that gets her attention legally. For sure. She also made some references to Nuremberg 2.0, which is a Delaware corporation, which I founded, as you are aware, to hold people accountable if they need to be held accountable. So certain things just like she did, but withholding medical information from patients, not giving them the side effects, risks, and benefits of a procedure or medication, which every practitioner must do, whether they're giving somebody a Tylenol or a heparin shot, they must tell them the risks and benefits of that medication. And that's in accordance with the Helsinki Accords as well, consumer information. So if people do not do that, they should be held accountable. It's on all the business and professions codes. They were written because of that, along with the Nuremberg Code, which prevents experimentation on human subjects without certain proper guidelines and reasons, like you don't test on inmates and pregnant women, which we have found they have done that exactly in the United States. So it's all about accountability. And she states that she talked with one professor in Canada who said that he was getting threats with that Nuremberg 2.0, which anybody could use, alluding that it was me, calling for harm, including hanging, which I would never do.
Right.
I'm looking for accountability. Somebody comes up and says, you know what? Okay, we did all these things. We did all these hospital protocols. It's not working. People are dying. We were wrong. We should have looked at it differently. What can we do to make this better and make it right, make sure it doesn't happen again? That's accountability. It's called repentance or making amends or however you want to look at that. That's what Nuremberg 2.0 is about.
Yeah.
I know the name really scares people, and it should, because it is a big deal.
Yeah. So did this reporter call you and ask you if you were the one in attendance? Did they ask for comment?
Never got a phone call, never got an email. And as you know, I'm not that hard to find.
No. You're all over social media. So, she says, you list yourself as CEO of Nuremberg 2.0 LTD on your LinkedIn profile, and says on your Twitter that you're a member of America's Frontline Doctors, wrote a book about COVID-19 pandemic, accuses globalists of using the crisis to inflate and keep the pandemic going with fear-mongering to fully take control of the world's governments and enslave us. Well, I mean, I think all that's true.
She didn't read it.
Yeah, she didn't read it, but I think if you would read it and you would understand it, it seems like the California State Assembly, you're making noise, even though you weren't there. You're making noise, and probably because of you and people like you who are trying to get the truth out. They're trying to stop you from being able to tell people what the truth is.
Sure, and I did file opposition papers from Nuremberg 2.0 on their online web portal last month for all the bills that related to this, to stand up against this and vaxism and the things that's causing. I actually had a nice about 2.5-hour dinner with a person who is running for state assembly here in California, and we talked about this. So hopefully she gets into office. We need to get that change.
Absolutely. So what are you trying to accomplish with Nuremberg 2.0 in just getting the truth out? Talk about what you want people to understand.
Well, what I want to understand is you have rights. So if you walk into a coffee shop and you want to buy a cup of coffee and they tell you no because you don't have a vaccine card, but you can't vote without an ID, that's wrong. Okay, whatever the laws say is really irrelevant. Really, it comes down to basic logic, right? If you are told that you're going to take, anybody with cancer, myself, for example, all the physicians came up to me and said, okay, well, we can do chemotherapy, or we can do surgery after chemotherapy, or we can do a combination of radiation and chemotherapy, and it may or may not work, and here are the risks, and here are the benefits. They had to tell me all those things. They didn't say, sign here and do what we tell you. As your previous guest said, it's medical Nazism. So everybody has the right to make their own self-determination. So it's about people removing that right. It's about violating the Helsinki Accord and not allowing consumers to have information. That includes mainstream media and the social media, calling these things disinformation. If somebody wants to dance around with crystals in their hands and think that's going to save them from a life-ending chronic disease, they should have the right to do that and given other information, but they still have the right to their own determination.
So this in the article. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, so really, it's accountability. So if there is anything, a legal statute, a business and professions codes, or norms and mores in society where you just can't blatantly lie to people, they should be held accountable, even if it's publicly shaming them, saying, "Hey, you were wrong. We don't like what you're doing. We're not putting you in the stockades and throwing tomatoes at you, but you get the opportunity now to stand up and, admit your fault and try to make a correction or not. And if there is a punishment that goes in line with that, whether it's a fine or whatever it may be, license, processes, things like that, then that should happen."
Yeah. So this Timothy Caulfield, professor of health at University of Alberta, says that he has been threatened by people claiming Nuremberg 2.0 and so forth, and says we need institutions like licensing boards, universities, and hospitals to step up and make sure their members who are speaking up about the scientific truth are being supported. But they also they want those same groups to ostracize people like you who are giving just an alternative view or a different opinion.
That's right. It's a double standard. It's complete hypocrisy. You can say whatever you want to say as long as it fits what we want you to say. It's the group think. I saw a post the other day. It totally made sense. This guy's out in the wild. They talk about academics and peer-reviewed articles, and the CARES Act actually says, real life knowledge and experience is absolutely valid. It's called wisdom. So of course you're going to have a bunch of academics, and I don't even know this guy, but it sounds like he's academia to me. I never heard of him until I read the article. But you have a bunch of people sitting around reading a case study or a clinical trial, and they all agree on it, and then rah rah sis boom bah. That's not real world knowledge. Where's a person who says, okay, is it repeatable? Basic scientific method. Can I repeat this, and do I get the same results as this previous trial? We're not allowed to do that. There's no input to say, well, you tried this and I tried this and this is what happened. Or go to the third person who tried something completely different, or the fourth person who tried a combination of the first three. It's not allowed, and that's not okay. Real world knowledge has been put to the side, saying it doesn't work. Only what we say works, which doesn't work, is going to be the baseline. And if you deviate from that, we're going to get you.
Talking with Dr. Bret Barker out in California, author of Sold Out Souls. We'll talk about that again here in just a moment. But I got to ask you this. So you've not called for, and I've not heard of anybody calling for violence of any doctor that they disagree with.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. It's freedom of speech. Legalized freedom. We should be able to have an honest, open discussion, a debate, as most people understand it to be, and talk about the pros and cons, the risks, the benefits of whatever it is on any topic, and discuss it, and then either agree to disagree or take that new knowledge and change our mind or alter our way of thinking or add that knowledge to our knowledge base and move forward with our lives, but not completely suppress it and leave, oh, well, what if that did work? Or just completely ignore it based on some heartfelt belief, and allowing people to be injured and die. If you look at the VIGIaccess.org website, World Health Adverse Reactions, there's over 3.7 million adverse reactions to vaccines. And I've never either said, don't get it. I say you need to know what the possibility is of harm to you by taking this versus what the benefits is, and we know that they do wane. And there are people with illnesses and disease process where it's a bad idea to get it, and there's still people who want it, and people have been injured and died because they went ahead and got it anyway, whether by their own choice, forced coercion, or threat of job loss. But those people should not get this, and they're forced to anyway. I talked with a person at the employee health at a local hospital over here, and one of the respiratory therapists was told that she had to get the vaccine, and she told her, well, there's adverse reactions and I have XYZ medical issues. And she was told, well, we do get vaccine injuries in the emergency department, we do treat them. And I talked to her after. I said, well, that's great. They're telling you they're going to give you something that's going to cause a reaction, but they're going to treat it. That should trigger them to say, you know what, maybe we shouldn't give this to people.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, I'm going to give you some cyanide. It's probably going to kill you, but if the dose is low enough, it might not. So, but you're going to take it anyway.
Yeah.
But we'll treat you if you get sick.
It's unbelievable. Dr. Barker, I don't know if you saw this, but over the weekend, there were 16 hospitalizations for runners at the Brooklyn Half Marathon. This was done early in the morning Saturday before it got extremely hot, temperatures in the 60s and 70s. One runner, and as a young, 30-something runner, I mean, these people are in top physical condition, collapsed and died after he finished the race. Come to find out, to run in that marathon, mandatory vaccination.
Yep. So, I think the vaccine, unfortunately, and it's not to make a joke, that's the whole story of the marathon to begin with. When he ran from Marathon to Athens and dropped dead when he gave the report of the battle. We know the heart issues. We know a lot of things that are happening with vaccinations and long-term effects. And they will not tie them together. They won't go back in time. They will not relate them. I know personal family friends that have had turbo cancer, we call it, refractive, or doesn't respond to chemotherapy or radiation. There's a lot of issues with this, and I would not be surprised if it was not a direct result. Of course, nobody will come out and admit it. And I don't understand it either, because if all the vaccine manufacturers are indemnified and are not held accountable if there are any adverse reactions, why wouldn't they just say, yeah, you're right, it was probably our vaccine, and tell us to kick rocks, because they don't care anyway.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's exactly right. Oh, they're saying it's safe. The latest is CBS News, 3 doses of Pfizer's COVID-19 vaccine offer strong protection for children younger than 5.
Under 5, yeah.
Unbelievable.
And I've not seen a kid under the age of 16 get severe COVID. I talk to, hundreds of people every week, and most of them get sniffles and common cold, as coronavirus has caused over 10,000 years. None of the inflammation and clotting issues, probably because they've been mass vaccinated throughout their lives and they have strong immune systems. But they typically blow through exposure to COVID just because they test positive quite well. Now, I'd love to get a time machine, break out the DeLorean keys in the archaeology degree and go back in time and test myself when I used to have the common cold as a kid, and I probably would test positive for COVID.
Yeah.
And you know what? I've had it multiple times in my life, and here I am. It doesn't have the spike protein that's modified and all these things today, but it's still the coronavirus that's been on the planet.
Right. Exactly. All right, let's talk about the latest virus that we're supposed to be scared of. Go in mommy's basement, wear 10 masks, and get triple and quadruple boosted. The monkeypox. What do you know about this? Is it basically the same as chickenpox and shingles? I mean, is it the same family of virus?
Well, they're in there, variola, varicella, all the things. So variola that causes smallpox. So if you're born, prior to 1972, like us, we probably had the smallpox vaccine previously and have some immunity to that. People that have had chickenpox, like myself, probably have some immunity to that. We'll have to, check people's lab results and see what happens. But yeah, it's in the same family. It does kind of the same things. It's type of a herpes virus family. And the problem with that, definitely with Wuhan 1 originally, probably the reason that taste and smell gets attacked is there's herpes-like components too of that modified coronavirus, so it can get into your nervous system, and you lose your taste and smell and do those things, and it can creep back up and reproduce spike protein under stress and things. Just like people get chickenpox, and 50 years later or so they wind up having an outbreak of shingles, or people with herpes cold sores undercome stress and weaken immune system, and they have a breakout. And the same with genital herpes. I mean, we've seen this for since we've known what these things were, and we know that they happen. And unfortunately, they're easily treatable. Okay, there are some antivirals out there that they're touting to use for smallpox, autoimmune disease for this monkeypox, and things like that. Of course, they won't come out and say what works and what doesn't work. Immune globulin, they're looking at giving to people, but then they go again right to red line, and they just put the hammer down on the gas pedal, go all the way to the end. What are they doing in between? I mean, anti-inflammatories working, or topical treatments working? Are there other less harsh antivirals that are readily available being used and tried to see if there's any effect? So far, I think the answer is no.
Do you believe that we're seeing an uptick in shingles as a result of adverse reaction to the mRNA vaccine?
I have to say absolutely. We do know that it is one of the adverse reactions listed right on the World Health website. Again, Helsinki Court, they meet that. They tell everybody about it. It's out there in plain sight. They just don't tell anybody it exists. But it does talk about shingles, and especially with this coming out of Australia, where we know that they've had a humongous, if not, they want everybody, their brother, sister, their cousin in the air they breathe to be vaccinated. Along with other illnesses, shingles is high, and I'm sure you've seen the commercials to see them boosting the shingles vaccine for people over 50 and even younger. And really, I think a lot of that is targeted to people who have been vaccinated because they know it's a side effect or an adverse reaction rather than a side effect. Sorry.
What do you make of the shortage of baby formula? By the way, they're shipping in enough baby formula for 500,000 8-ounce bottles. So we can be so thankful for our government. 500,000 8-ounce bottles is not going to go very far. But what do you think about this supply problem?
Well, back on the first one, just like with our fuel reserves and our oil reserves, it's just a trickle. It's just a pittance, just to look like they did something. The title of my latest edition of the book, it's the Four Horsemen edition. Conflict, war, famine, and death. There, as Dan Bongino and actually my buddy Mike Loftus said on GovDeal about a month ago, this is not a mistake. These are on purposes. Okay.
Yeah.
Definitely and on purpose. You don't have food processing plants being destroyed, you have supply chain issues, or divisiveness, segregation, all these things that are happening. You don't have an FDA shut down a plant that is a major producer, not go in, make a correction, and get that plant back up and running, which apparently is still not up and running, and come up with a new plan to build a new plant, which takes a long time to redevelop, retool, and do things to start processing. It just makes zero sense. So it's absolutely on purpose.
Yeah. That's very concerning. 30-some food processing plants that have caught on fire. I mean, that doesn't just happen. There's something going on there, and the media
don't believe it's spontaneous combustion.
Yeah. I mean, where's the media on this stuff?
Oh, they're talking about other things to keep us distracted, as you know.
Oh, yeah. And back to the baby formula. I mean, at some point in time, we're just going to have to come up with other ways. I mean, I mean, that's easy for me to say. I don't have a baby right now, but
right.
I mean, what would be the harm in just giving the baby vitamin D milk or carnation or whatever they used to do 50, 60 years ago?
Before formula, yeah, and I've received lots of calls from people with friends with mothers, and they're crying and they're not sure what to do, and people are going down to GNC or the health food store, and they're buying whey protein drinks like they would use for the gym for themselves, and of course the carnation, the powdered milk, evaporated milk, and these things, and blending up stuff, and they're warned to not do that because of bacteria that may get in, it'd be in the water, and of course you would boil the water just like you would if you're reconstituting baby formula. So it's really an invalid argument, but people they're making their own. They're coming up with ways to feed their kids. They're not going to let them starve. As human beings, we're not going to do that. Oh, there's no formula. Okay, kids got to go.
Yeah.
It's just not going to happen. So, but there are people struggling, but they are going by, and just like just to tie back to the COVID thing, with the vaccinations, say the vaccines must be working because there's less hospitalizations. Well, myself, my colleagues, there's thousands and thousands of us out there that are working behind the scenes trying to keep people out of the hospital with alternative treatments, and that's what's going on. You're not hearing about a bunch of infant deaths because parents are feeding their kids. They're finding ways to make it. They may not be 100% the formula you find on the shelf, but they're getting enough nutrition into their kids.
Yeah. And what do you think is the next one? I mean, is it going to be vitamins and supplements? Is it going to be bread and milk? What's going to happen next that there's going to be a shortage of?
Well, sure. I mean, you already heard that, because of the Ukraine, we're not going to have any wheat. America doesn't grow wheat anymore, apparently. So it's all going to be reliant on the Ukraine. And when that's all gone, we're not going to have any wheat. So you're probably right about the bread. We know about the inflation going on with high prices and things. What's next? Well, supplements have already been targeted. I mean, N-acetylcysteine, or NAC, is an over-the-counter supplement that's been readily available for years up until the recent months when the FDA started pulling it because people were using it for COVID treatment because it's a powerful antioxidant. So I think Walmart was the last one to carry that. And then I've actually seen people on Etsy stockpiling it and marking it up just to sell it to people to make it available because of these behind-the-scenes bans, just like you have the FDA pushing the Postal Service to prevent shipments of ivermectin to come into the country, but you can get all the fentanyl you want.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Would to God that we'd have some illegal immigrants bringing in some ivermectin and HCQ and NAC.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
I mean, if they're going to come here anyway, they might as well bring something we can use.
Exactly.
And we can meet them in the back
Unfortunately, like with antibiotics, I made a joke years ago that, people don't finish their antibiotics. Usually got 2 or 3 left after any treatment. But if you put a little cocaine or methamphetamine in there, they'd finish every single one of them.
Dr. Bret Barker, Doctor of Nursing in Carmel, California. Tell us about your book.
So Sold Out Souls, Simple Truths Ignores. It's about SARS-2 COVID-19 in my experience during the pandemic, starting in February of 2020, up to present. The latest edition was released in December. I just polished up some edits on it this last week. I talk about a lot of the things that they don't want to hear, controversial treatments, including ivermectin and hydroxychloroquine, and what the disease process is. Now those two drugs, they're great. There's nothing wrong. They got great safety profiles, but understanding what we call the pathophysiology of what COVID does to the body is essentially inflammation and clotting after the viral phase, and how to treat those issues and get people better. So with or without those controversial meds, these protocols work. They're based on Zelenko's original use of vitamin D, C, zinc, and hydroxychloroquine, as well as Dr. Peter McCullough. I started following in March of 2020, kind of became my mentor. And this has evolved. I include things on vaccine injuries and long-haul COVID and treating the long-term pulmonary issues that happen from people that are not treated properly with medications that are really available in hospitals for inflammation and clotting problems. I've talked to a lot of people and helped people through the process of getting their lungs better, because basically they go, the lung damage is done, and you're going to have to live with it with chronic obstructive pulmonary disease now, and that's not absolutely true. There are definite treatments, and they're forcing people to give up by telling them there's nothing else that can be done. And so I talk a lot about that. And as well as, yes, it has that one thing that reporter from MedPage Today did say that was accurate, is I do talk about the globalist takeover and conquest, because it's absolutely true. I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I'm a conspiracy realist.
Right.
I spent 12 years in the military. I was trained on how to identify and take out communists, and now I have to live with them, and I don't like it.
Yeah. Yeah. And then now you're spending $40 billion, our country is, of our money, sending it to Ukraine.
That's right. That's right. And, former part of the Soviet Union had about 25% of their, needs, making their weapons, growing their food, doing all these things. And, it was a Soviet bloc country. I'm glad they got their alleged freedom, or however they want to look at that. But there's a lot of things that goes on with the Ukraine, and a lot of backdoor things that haven't come out yet. In my own personal opinion, I'm not going to put this on anybody else but me. It's hush money for the big guy.
Wouldn't be a bit surprised. Yeah. And it's the perfect storm, is it not? I mean, the global food supply shortage, the pandemic, with another one coming, and World War III on the horizon, and an incompetent commander-in-chief that just left $85 billion worth of military equipment in the hands of our enemy that we've been fighting for 20 years in Afghanistan. I mean, it's just all coming together.
Absolutely, and our good buddy George Orwell nailed it when he wrote 1984, and I also have to give credit to Yuri Bezmenov and his speech. Anybody can find on YouTube in 1984. He's a KGB defector, and he totally outlined in detail and accurately how subversion works, from destabilization, demoralization, crisis, and normalcy, the four-step process they use to take over governments and countries, getting to their children, their government, their schools, their supply chains, all these things you just talked about, and it's a continuous cycle. You just keep adding on it, and you just turn one up here, turn one up there. A little more destabilization, here's a new crisis, keep them distracted, take two things away, give them one back, take two things away, give them one back, get that into normalcy, get them used to being compliant, and eventually you have full control of population, and you have complete destruction of the middle class, which seems to be the ultimate goal. No religion. You want people completely gender confused so they're not reproducing, so you have less babies. You need Planned Parenthood because you're not having males and females reproducing. All these things are going on at once, and it's mind-blowing for most people to wrap their heads around. So they don't want to think about it or talk about it.
No.
Because of fear or whatever reason, and because it is scary.
Yeah.
It is a mind-blowing thing. It gives, I'm sure, people headaches and severe anxiety and things. It's very, very serious. So people would rather not think about it, go to work, live their lives the best they can until it happens to them, and then they get pissed off.
Yeah.
They should be pissed off already just by the thought of it happening. If somebody, and that's the thing about all these all these physicians and nurse practitioners and things like myself being attacked for spreading this information out there. It's just nuts. You would think that if you have enough people standing up outside say, hey, you got to listen to us. We found this. Somebody would pay attention instead of just closing the door.
You would think. Where can folks find your book?
You can find it on Amazon. It's on Kindle, paperback, hardcover. It's also on paperback and hardcover on Barnes & Noble.
Good deal. All right. Army veteran, a doctor, and author, Dr. Bret Barker. Always appreciate you coming on. Great info.
Thank you so much, Tom.
All right.
Hope you have a great day.
All right, you too. Back in a moment. You're listening.